The church is not simply a building, a steeple, a pew. The church is the gathering together of all the people and experiences, and fear and love and hope in our resilient hearts, gathering however we can to say to the world, welcome, come in, lay down your heartache, and pick up hope and love. For the church is us, each and every one of us together, a beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it. Please say and then sing our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Let faith and love Now hum once and then sing, Spirit of Life. Joys and Sorrows is live this Sunday. I will move a stone into the symbolic blue river to mark each joy or sorrow. Please raise your hand and Karina will call on you and unmute you to speak.
Okay. So yesterday was my brother's birthday, born on the 4th of July. And also he announced he is going to get married. So 2 good things. Celebrate.
My joy is to have Bob back with us again.
I just wanted to ask Karen to tell Steve congratulations.
I had a deep sadness 2 days ago. My oldest and dearest friend died in Massachusetts. She was at home and surrounded by her family who have been taking wonderful care of her. And this was not unexpected, but it threw me in the sense that I am somehow feeling more alone, even though I didn't see her very frequently over the past few years. She helped me in many ways, just sometimes in casual conversation, which stayed with me, sometimes by showing me how to take care of children. All her children were just a little bit older than mine, and she was a wonderful big sister to me as our children were growing up. Jean, I miss you. I will miss you always. Abe atque ale. Goodbye, Jean. Thank you.
We have shared some of your many joys and sorrows. You have been heard. We hold you in our hearts, both the silent and the spoken joys and sorrows. Karina is now going to share with us A Time for All Ages.
So, I have the pleasure of being your Zoom host for today and also of being your RE coordinator. Welcome to Our Time for All Ages. I would like to share a wonderful book that I found on the Social Justice Books website. It is titled Radiant Child by artist and author Javaka Steptoe. This book celebrates the life and the art of artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. Like Basquiat, the creator of this book painted the illustrations on found wood from around New York City. The art in this book is inspired by the art of Basquiat and Steptoe's interpretations of his paintings and designs. These last few pages of the book have quite a bit of information about the artist, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and a little about the creator of this book. If you're interested in this book, I will post these closing pages and the cover in the chat over the course of the service, and you'll be able to find them there. Thank you for enjoying this lovely book with me.
Thank you, Karina. Before I introduce Reverend Bob MacDonald, let me say that I forgot in the joys and sorrows he handed me a little card to say he has a terrific joy today. He has twin grandchildren, Jack and Ava, who turned 14 today. So I'm going to take 2 stones for Jack and Ava and put them in the river. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Bob MacDonald, who was our part-time minister for 7 years before Paul Johnson. Welcome back, Bob.
Well, I'm happy to be here with you for the most part. As I thought about getting ready for this service, I wondered how best to prepare. I thought of calling my physician, my old physician who took me back, and asking him if he had a particular anti-anxiety medication for a clergyman dealing with all kinds of technology, he know not what. But I remembered when I asked him for help with sleeping many years ago, he said to me, no, just do more to get tired during the day. So I didn't go that route. The second thought I had was to dig out that little book that Ken George, former board president, wrote on the history of this congregation. And my recollection is that the church began actually in, when was it? February 1992. But I've moved too many times and can't find the history book. So take my word for it. We're a young congregation. We've had our plate full of challenges and hurdles. We are in one now to beat all. We cannot be together in a community that has lifted us in joy and in sorrow. We cannot reach out to the larger community around us until it is safe to do so. I'm not wearing clergy garb, but I did wear a mask today to remind you. I don't know if you can see it. I guess it reminds me. In talking to a senior friend I've known from Long Island, she, originally from Europe, found some strength in remembering the crises she has survived. As a child, she endured the Nazi occupation of her native Belgium. As a young war bride in America, she endured the polio epidemic of the 50s. Pre-Salk, she lost her firstborn to that epidemic. So we all must survive this one, even as we hear of the awful numbers of those who aren't surviving. The cable news runneth over with talking heads, but there is good medical advice to heed. Mask, distance, home. Here today, I am reminded of a minister friend who says that when he goes back to churches he's known before, he feels the spirit and the love of those who gave a lot of themselves. I'll mention two, Isabel Gagnon and Don Shank. They lived nearby, and you could always call on them for a key or a signature. Their love of this place was quiet but eloquent. They and many have passed a legacy of love to us. We've got to look forward to getting back to or onto what we are building here at TCUU, or is it UUTC? I'll learn that. We are and have been and want to be more a welcoming, supportive community to people who want that in their lives and who have known churches not always to be that, and too often anything but. We are and want to be a place where we can explore our own spirituality and learn about the spirituality of others. As in all of life, we really want to be able to encourage people in their differences of spirituality. We like hearing from people who are different. We feast in that enrichment. We used to say in that book group that began in '07 that we were glad to hear about each other's spiritual journeys. I tell you about mine. I hope you will tell me about yours. And we hope we contributed to each other's. But we also did not want to hear that only one is the true way and mine is better than yours. That sounds like one of Eric Burns' games people play, and religions have been dangerously lethal at it. This challenging time we are in has reminded us too often and piercingly of the experience of helplessness and vulnerability. Would we have a future? Worse, would the generations we helped get going and want a thriving future for, would they have one? I was heartened by and wanted to say, me too, to Brian Stelter of CNN's Reliable Sources, when he said that one Friday night, I think in April, he couldn't function and lay down and assumed the position, fetal, and cried. All this vulnerability reminded me of one of my favorite heresies in ancient church history. In the 300s, kind of way before our time, there were 3 Catholic bishops called the Cappadocian Fathers, so in modern Turkey, who espoused patripassionism. Patra, the Father of the Godhead, feels the suffering of the Son of the Godhead, declared heretic. But I wouldn't want to believe in a deity who didn't feel suffering. And I haven't known a parent who doesn't suffer when their child does. On to our story. If you have spent time in Protestant churches, you have probably heard a popular hymn that goes, "We've a story to tell to the nations that will turn their hearts to the Lord, to the right, to the truth," and ends with a kingdom of love and light. It's what we used to call a missionary hymn, a hymn with oxygen to get you up and going. You don't want to sing a lullaby before the sermon. We have a story to tell. The UU tradition is a proud story of free thought, belief, and questioning. We have martyrs like Servetus, the Spanish doctor and theologian, who thought he could reason with Calvin. We have a proud history of advocacy and activism for social justice. And we have martyrs in the civil rights struggle, like Reverend James Reeb and Mrs. Viola Liuzzo. We don't have a creed, but we stand on mighty principles, our bedrock, and I want to remind you. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, our story to tell. Where does that ring a bell today, or rather recently? The US Supreme Court ruled you can't be fired from a job for being gay or transgender. People have every right, their civil right, to be who they are. In 2020, that won by 1 vote on the court. So the advocacy has to be loud and clear, our story to tell. And the same week, the court ruled that DACA dreamers, children who were brought here and have only known America as their home, do not have to live in fear of being deported. The inherent dignity and worth of every person. Black lives matter. Yes, we have to say that until we don't have to, and we are a long way from that. African Americans have a lot to teach us. I just learned this year about Juneteenth. Ken Burns' series on Reconstruction taught us that the time after the Civil War was not about making amends with former slaves. It was more about making new forms of slavery, like prison work gangs that local governments could use instead of paying for work to be done. History has a way of staying with us until we face it. And history is full of massacres by white mobs on Black communities. Tulsa, 1921. Roswell, Florida, 1923. Countless lives taken for the crime of a rumored unwanted look. I read somewhere that Black workers had to enter the White House through the back door during the Eisenhower years. The Eisenhower years. That's my history and that of a lot of us. Yes, Black lives matter. It's heartbreaking to hear parents of young boys say they are afraid to let their boys go out the door. Of course they are. In America, 2020. And there's a lot of news today about voting. Again, in America, 2020, do we have to fight voter suppression? A new resident in our area called the church recently to ask if our UU, got active in getting out the vote efforts. He's a retired cop with quite a record in civil rights activity himself. I wasn't quick enough to cite another of our foundational brick principles, the use of the democratic process within congregations and society at large. That sounds like voting. Whatever your politics, we believe in voting in America. A number of us will find ways to help get out the vote efforts. It's hard to believe today we have to fight for that, but we do. We've got to keep on keeping on. This is our story to tell. Who else will tell it? And we need and want this faith community to not stop telling it. In fact, we want us, we need us to grow. As I've written to you recently, and will keep saying, I need you to tell me what we can do better together. I have my ideas of our story. I really need to hear yours. Our closing hymn is 159. This is my song, 2 verses.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace, O lands of far and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my hope, they shine. But other hearts in other lands are beating, with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on cloud beneath and brine. But other lands have sunlight too, and flatter, and skies are
Reverend Bob will now extinguish our chalice. Please carry the flame with you in your hearts and lead by being loved to all you meet. Be the change. Take care of yourself and others you love. Our service will now conclude with the postlude. Please stay around after the postlude for our virtual coffee hour.